Hey everyone, it's Paul Nalabondian, your local DMV real estate expert and part-time economic guru. But today I am here at Universal Title's incredible Old Town offices in their wonderful studio, joined by another expert, Katie Griffin. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Katie Griffin. I am a title attorney. I practice in DC, Maryland, and Virginia as a licensed real estate settlement officer. So we conduct closings for all three of our local jurisdictions, and I've been doing that since 2006.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you got into real estate right before the economic collapse.
Changed quite a bit.
What was that like? I'm just curious to hear.
It was very interesting as someone who was getting into the business in 2006. So 2008, 2009 were very interesting. We saw business fall off, but in DC, we never saw it fall off a cliff. Mm-hmm. There was a lot more leveling out than anything else. Home values stayed pretty strong. We did see a much more robust foreclosure and short sale market. Mm-hmm. So with those sorts of challenging markets, you always find opportunities too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, I'm curious, when you early on there, did you enter into a period, because that was right at the cusp where all of a sudden a lot of deals you were working on just fell apart and fell to close?
Sitting at the table for a mortgage with Countrywide for a buyer and being told at the table that the money wasn't coming. That was not a great day. Mm-hmm. And we can only laugh about it in retrospect. That particular buyer was able to pull together other financing with another lender. The transaction went through. But just as we saw with the pandemic, just as we're seeing anytime there are external market forces, part of what saves those transactions is having really good realtors involved in them that can help buyers who want to buy and sellers who want to sell make an agreement that works for everybody and work through those tough times.
Absolutely. They're definitely highlighted that when things get a little more difficult, having experts helping you as far as the agents and title is really important. Here we're seeing it again where we're having a little bit of a market shift, some changing economic landscape, and super important to have expertise. It's funny, you talk about Countrywide. So at that time I was still practicing law, and we represented Bank of America and Countrywide. And for years after that, all of my work was on cases related to all of those problems. Pretty interesting. Yeah. But let's keep it on the real estate focus.
Yeah.
So if you ever have questions about anything related, just as a consumer or even an agent, reach out to a title company you're familiar with or a title attorney you've worked with, because they really do have an added layer of expertise about all aspects of the transaction. One thing I want to ask you about, and this is something a lot of buyers and sellers aren't really familiar with, and a lot of agents aren't either, but what is the difference between a standard owner's title policy and enhanced title? And if you could just touch on the key facets of that to help buyers out there understand which is right for them.
Yeah. Well, title insurance is unusual in the world of insurances because essentially what it does is insure the owner that everything prior to their ownership was A-okay, hunky-dory. There are no problems with their ownership interest in the property. Mm-hmm. That is a standard policy of title insurance. The enhancement that's available for owner-occupied properties only, generally, because it's designed to enhance the coverage that you have for the roof over your head, allows some different factors that might come up when you live in the property and use it as your primary residence. Mm-hmm. Some of the really important differences is that an enhanced policy of owner's title insurance has coverage for unpermitted improvements on the property. So if someone was to come around and say to you, no one insured this deck / garage / carport / curb cut, title insurance might have some coverage for you there.
Well, and I don't want to say that happens a lot in this area, but I've seen it happen a lot in this area. It's surprising.
Yeah. The other things that the enhancement does, because we think of this as a home as a more long-term investment in these cases, the title insurance will allow you to transfer your property into a revocable trust, which is an estate planning vehicle, without additional coverage premiums or riders to that policy.
That is key.
That
especially
is
for this area, because you see a lot of transactions where they won't necessarily put it into a trust to begin with, but that's the plan down the road, and they're not aware of all of the implications that happens, because that is an ownership transfer.
Yeah.
Even if it's your trust, even if you're the sole beneficiary, putting a property into a trust is an ownership transfer.
But I think one of the most important protections that comes along with that enhancement is protection for mechanics liens. And
speaking of those unpermitted jobs.
So when we talk about a mechanic in this circumstance, we're talking about anyone who has done work to the property that has added value to the property. So in the context of a home sale, if the seller of the property is replacing the roof or the HVAC or doing plumbing work or something along those lines just prior to the sale, and let's say they just don't ever pay for that work, that person could come back and put a lien on the property based on the fact that they added value to the property. And if that lien does not show up on record until after our closing is complete, then it wouldn't be covered under title insurance, right? Because we didn't have a chance to check it. It wasn't in the rearview mirror. So that mechanics lien coverage is something that is incredibly important, especially if you are dealing with a property that's new construction or a renovation, because those mechanics liens can and do come up, and unfortunately they're not always justified. Sometimes there's someone, a contractor that's had a dispute with a seller and files a mechanics lien, and even that has to be defended, even if it is maybe a wrongful one.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about title insurance is that if it is wrongful and you have the enhanced protection, then you are not responsible for the defense. The insurance will cover.
Yeah, that's right. In some ways, you can think about title insurance as prepaid legal for title issues that could come up for your property in the future during your ownership. And listen, we issue title insurance property policies firmly hoping and believing that you are not going to have those kinds of issues come up. But one of the ways that title insurance pays for itself is that more than any other time, you would want to pull that policy out and have it available when you go to sell the property.
Absolutely. Now, actually, two things I want to touch on. One related to that directly, and then the other just mechanics liens. And forget me if I'm wrong, just recalling back to law school. Mechanics liens are one of the most powerful liens. They can supersede, and I believe they do supersede virtually every other type of lien. They will supersede your lender's lien. Yeah. And that is not something you necessarily want to have to deal with on your own. And not whatever title insurance policy is good for you, that's your own choice. The key, though, I always say with my clients is whatever decision you make is a good decision as long as it's an informed decision. Yeah. And then going back to how it helps you when you sell, one of the things, and in a perfect world, these are all things that if you're a consumer, your agent is counseling you about. But if not, or if you are an agent and you're not aware of this, super, super key, tell us about a reissue rate and what that means.
So the title insurance industry, in a lot of ways, works best when properties are insured again and again and again. Because as you can imagine, a title that is checked often, just like a car that is checked often, is less risky. So if I've got a property that has been insured within the last few years, I'm able to know that this property's title has been checked on, things that someone has kicked the tires, and it's looking pretty good. In light of that, the title insurance industry, not in all jurisdictions, but in most, offers what is called a reissue discount on title insurance, meaning that if the property's title was previously insured and we have access to that policy of title insurance, a discount is available for the new policy that's being issued as part of that sale or purchase. So reissue is a little bit of a misnomer because the buyer does still get their own new independent policy of title insurance, but the discount is designed to recognize the fact that a property that is being reinsured is less risky than a property that hasn't been insured in a long time.
And if you are an agent helping a buyer purchase a property, or if you're a buyer purchasing a property and your agent doesn't mention this, if it had previously sold within the past few years, particularly past 5 years, this is even more important. Katie, we've done a couple of deals recently where my buyer's title insurance policy premium, because of the reissue rate discount, 2 times the premium was less than $5. And a normal premium is in the thousands.
Yes.
I mean, not necessarily more than like 1,000 plus, depending on the value of the property and all of these things. But if you have to pay $5 or $3,000, I think most of us would choose to pay $5. So make sure if you're a buyer, you're asking about that reissue rate, asking your agents about it, or if you're an agent, inquiring about it.
Yeah. And what I'll say about that is that the reissue rate, the discount varies, because it's based on the premium from the last policy that was issued. So in those cases that you and I looked at together, the property had sold very recently, had last sold very recently, and for something that was close to the current sales price. So those instances are where you can get a phenomenal discount on title insurance through the reissue rate. But a discount is a discount.
Yeah.
It is absolutely always worth asking.
Yeah.
Because it's a discount that your agent is going to be really happy to hook you up with. And we as the title company can help you. If the seller doesn't have immediate access to their title policy, we can frequently try and help them go back to the last title company that worked on the property, request that, try and get that discount in place for a new buyer.
I love this. 2 lawyers talking, there'll always be the caveats and always the CYA.
Yeah.
So what Katie is saying is if you get a reissue rate and it's more than $5, don't come complain to us.
Also, if you're buying from a grandma who's owned her home for the last 40 years, we might still be able to get you a reissue rate, but it's not going to be that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is variable, but always worth asking. And in many jurisdictions, title insurance premiums are negotiable too. So I think it is worth being knowledgeable and empowered to ask those questions, and let your title company and your realtor figure out what they can do for you to help your closing costs stay as low as possible.
So learn something new every day. I actually did not know that those premiums were negotiable. Are you talking about negotiable as far as coverage related to premium, or you can get the same coverage at a cheaper premium?
So in some
because I know you can ask for less coverage. Okay.
Maryland and DC do not allow you to negotiate title insurance premiums. Virginia does. So then on the other hand, Virginia doesn't offer a reissue rate. Maryland and DC do. So that's why I think having an open conversation with your title company and your realtor about, are there ways for us to keep our costs low, is worth having. And I think that any title company is ready and willing to have those conversations to make sure that we're giving our clients the best deals we can.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's close it out. I'd like to know, why don't you run through some of the perks or benefits that first-time home buyers can have in this area? I know a lot of times if you're a first-time home buyer, not necessarily aware of that, and sometimes it slips by the agents as well.
So both Maryland and DC offer discounts on recording and transfer taxes for first-time home buyers. Maryland's program really just requires that the buyer or buyers of the property be purchasing their first home in the state of Maryland. It needs to be a home they're going to use as your primary residence. And then it is the state transfer tax that is reduced basically to zero on the buyer side of the transaction. And that's part of the contract. You'll see it in most of the jurisdictional addendums that get attached to the regional contracts that cover the state of Maryland.
And we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars here. This is not insignificant.
Yeah, in some instances that savings can be really large. In DC, there's also a first-time homebuyer discount for recordation tax. DC has a few more caveats that get added to it. The purchase price needs to be under a median level set by the district every tax year. The buyer's income needs to be under a certain level, again set by the district every tax year. I find though that many DC first-time home buyers can be qualified for the program.
Mm-hmm.
So it does require that we look at the purchase price, that we ask you for some income information,
Mm-hmm.
but that becomes a discount of as much as half off your recordation tax, which again is potentially thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm.
So related to that, I believe, could be off, but I think DC's sales price limit for that is $752, or somewhere right around there.
It's somewhere right around there. My $752, $755. It starts with a 7 and a 5.
Yeah.
And
So the sales price is $770.
Yes.
Does that mean it's just gone, or it's prorated?
It's just gone. It's just gone. DC says that above that sales price limit, they're not giving first-time home buyer discounts. And the idea is they're trying to do this discount for folks who they have decided need it.
Yeah. And so I knew the answer to that, but I wanted to go down this path because that means it's incredibly important if you're a buyer purchasing right around this range. So let's say you're a buyer, you go under contract on a home at $750. And then, or you're planning to, like, you can get under contract at $750, but the buyer wants some closing cost assistance. So then you say to the seller, okay, we'll increase the sales price by $10,000 and you give us a $10,000 credit. Well, you have now eliminated your first-time home buyer reduced recordation tax, which would be, not do the quick math, but I would, in that price range would probably be like half the credit. Anyways, it would. I mean, you would be losing thousands of dollars by going over that number. So, like anything, just if you're around that $750 range, be very careful about what you do. Or if you're negotiating and you submit an offer at $750 and a seller counters at $755, you can say, hey, like this is the tax implication. And then you could reach some solution which could keep you under that would be advantageous to both.
And I think what's important is knowing as you go in. And in DC as well, if your purchase price is $400,000 or more, you open up the higher level of DC recordation tax. So there's a really appreciable difference at buying a property between $399, $999, and $400,000. And it's something that I think that agents and buyers miss that can be really important. I mean, you can save your clients a lot of money if you are the agent that's in the know on those sorts of things. Yeah,
absolutely. Anyway, now my brain is going back. We'll check this later, but I think so. If a sales price is $750, I think the recordation tax would be, it's right around 1.5%.
It's 1.45%.
So that would be about, let's say, $11,500 and change. The discount's half of that. So it'd be about $55. It's between $5,000 and $6,000 saved.
It is a good discount that if you don't keep that in mind in that scenario that you were talking about in that negotiation, you're leaving money on the table for sure. Yeah.
And going back to your point, I've had this happen before where negotiating over a contract and my sellers wanted to counter at in the 4s when it bumped up the rate. And I was like, let's keep it at this level and all reap some benefit in other areas of the contract. All right. Well, good stuff. Thank you so much, Katie.
Absolutely.
For running through this today. I think this is going to be very helpful for a lot of home buyers and agents, and particularly first-time home buyers. And then thanks again. I shot my monthly market session here, wrapped it just before we started this here at Universal Title's wonderful studios in Old Town Alexandria. If you happen to be in the area, pop on by. They've also got a great candy supply. So I don't know if they let people just walk in off the street and raid the candy, but it is quite impressive.
Listen,
I might have to do a video on that.
Ask a question about title insurance, and then you can have as much candy as you want.
Tell them you're thinking, you're in the process of looking for a home to buy, and they will be your default.
Candy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Katie.
You're so welcome.